requirements are not those as of the captain of the boat. So why know them? You already have enough information to worry about. So look at this chart is designed to help you not only look through the recognize those of relatively lesser importance. Now, this is not to say this is never tested. They've been tested before. But are we going to spend a great deal of time talking about part 4? Next to none. Because we're going to have plenty of things to talk about in part 10, part 12, part 18, 19, and moving on. So the goal is for you guys to take a look at the chart on a regular basis and start recognizing those parts. And most importantly, recognizing the name. Because those names and part recognition will help you open the book, the open book test, open the book in the right place. Because if you are being asked about free trade agreement, you know that your fingers should be moving toward part 10, at least as far as CFR is concerned, Code of Federal Regulations. There is also provision in HTS US, but most likely, if it's CFR, it's part 10, not anywhere else. So if you start regularly reviewing those, don't memorize them right away, but just review them once in a while during the morning coffee break. And after a certain time, you have plenty of time until April. You'll be able to recognize them well enough to save seconds of that precious time that you have on the exam. And instead of looking, okay, is it part 10, part 12, part what? Or looking up at this chart, if you bring it along with you, you know right away, it's part 10, boom. Without, you just save yourself several seconds. So the idea behind me putting those charts is just that. So you guys start to become familiar with all the information that is out there. So you recognize it. Now, we're still on open book exam. So open book is not that easy. And knowing where things are in that open book helps. It helps because it saves time, and it helps because you know where to look up the answer. The goal again, I try to ask you guys to feel yourself like a librarian. If you ever been to a library, you go to a librarian. Librarian knows where to find things, not because they know everything about that topic. So if I go to a library and ask a science fiction book, or ask a kid's book, let's say Halloween, I want to know Halloween, I want to read something about Halloween Goosebumps, or Stephen King novel, or whatever. A librarian may never have read that book, but they'll be sure to know where to find it, because they know how to catalog it. They know the system of maintenance. This is what you guys are doing in an open book. In open book, you open that book, and you know exactly that if it's free trade agreements, and it's a Code of Federal Regulations, you go to part 10 right away. Unless, of course, it's other free trade agreements, like North American Free Trade Agreement, which is a trade agreement between Canada and Mexico, is so huge it has its own section, Part 181, I think. I think because there is so much information, it's better not to lose time on such minor things, but focus on the substance. So by the time you sit on the exam, you should be feeling comfortable. You should be like a librarian of the Code of Federal Regulations, and you should know where the titles lie. So calculators and watches are okay. I think some people bring like small clock, like analog clock in front of them, so they know exactly where they are time-wise. I use in my exam I used just watch just like that. It was fine. I think nowadays they make those watches which can browse internet and text message in the phone. But do you have those watches that are like that, like wrist watches? So I've been watching. I like high-tech videos, and I've seen some nice watches. I also seen like has anybody who heard about Google glasses? I know some people. A lot of people wear glasses, right? So can you show up with Google glasses on your exam? I don't think they thought of this yet, right? But I'm sure if you come in like, oh, nice glasses, yeah, they're from Google. Do you think what do you think they will say? This is something which I do not know what they will do. They probably won't do nothing, right? But I know that not on customs exam, but on a bar exam, which is attorney's exam, one person showed up with a marker, which was not a marker, but it was a scanner, and they were scanning all these questions. So they are no longer allowing, at least in New York bar exam, they are no longer allowing to use markers. You have to use a pen and pencil to highlight. So I haven't seen that happening in the customs exam, but as technology develops, there may be additional rules. Just keep it simple, guys. You have enough stress to live with, rather than having your watch taken away because it accepts text messages or whatever. Next, number of questions. Used to be day when there were 80 questions. 100 questions, and you had 4.5 hours to do that. Some of those exams are still here, way back. If you go back to the early ones, there you'll find them. Now customs become more kind, relatively more kind, and they only ask you to do the 80 questions. But within the 80 questions, they are not essay questions, they are multiple choice questions, and you have 5 answer choices to deal with. So for each question alone, you have 20% chance if you guess. This comes, so you have 80 questions, and all of them are multiple choice answers. Now, there is something about multiple choice answers which is very tricky. When you hear a word multiple choice, that means, and you are told, you are given 5 different answers. This means that you, custom examiners, and believe me, they, a lot of time, and you will see it for yourself, they dwell meticulously on many questions. They introduce those questions in 1 year, and they polish it over 3 years until they get it right. One example, which if you look through the book, is a marble tile example with the country of origin. I've seen it 3 or 4 times in its various forms. One time, and they're looking for that line to push you. But what's the difficult part? The difficult part is that since you are given 5 answers, you are being tested on 5 different topics in one question. At least if the question is written well. What does it mean? 5 different topics? So you're not really having 80 questions or 80 topics to be tested. You have 400, no? Yeah. 8 times 5. 40. So that's how difficult it can get. And statistics, I saw some unofficial statistics back in the day. I believe mine were 7% nationwide. That's not very good. I think there were some exams where as much as 5% of students who all took the exam passed. Usually it's in the range of 15 to 25%, something like that. But there are extremes, and so the difficulty just speaks for itself. But the difficulty, most of it, is in the time management. If you play by the rules, if you show up, and you go through all this stuff, all these drills, I know we may not have enough time to cover absolutely we will not have enough time to cover absolutely every single topic, but we should be able to cover enough to pass the threshold. Next, time to complete. So you have 80 questions, you have 5 answers for each question, you have 4 hours, which equals 240 minutes. Of course, that time is an average time because you have things that happen. You may want to go to the restroom in the middle of the exam, which happens to many people for various reasons. For those of you who will be taking it in New York, you'll be taking it probably will be taking it in a hotel. So the procedure, if you're not sitting next to the restroom, the procedure may take as much as 5 minutes of your time. 3 minutes if you run. Alright? So does it cut your average? Yes, it does. So does it mean that you have 3 minutes, which if you do the math will be 80 questions? No, you have less. Leave yourself 15-minute buffer and make sure that your question is not 3 minutes on average. Again, stress on average, because there should be questions which will take 5 seconds, there should be questions which take 10 minutes. Hopefully those 5-second questions are in preponderance. But this is the average timeline, and keep that time in mind, because this will not only give you time for unexpected events, but also will give you time for review. And as you dive into the topic, we'll be discussing answering strategies, etc., etc. When you practice these questions, at the beginning, don't worry about the time clock. Try to get the concepts. Usually, I would say after the New Year's, start to try to pay attention to the time, because that's the time. January, February is the time when you should be instead of, because after building foundation, we will have enough foundation for us to be mindful of the time, because if we're mindful of the time all the time, we can never get the structure. If we don't get the structure, we are playing lottery, because there is a reason behind every question, and if you can assign the reason, you are moving away from the lottery game. So you're not playing chances, you're playing reasons, and that means you are in a better position. All right, next. Of course, some questions you just don't know. There will be topics which will just feel awful. Some students feel awful about classification, the harmonized study schedule of the United States. They hate it, and I understand them, because unlike Code of Federal Regulations, where usually custom examiners ask you to fill in the blanks, classification questions, harmonized study schedule questions, they are fluid. It may be this answer, but it may be that one. So I have a laser point pen. It's made out of metal. Is it article of metal, or is it optical device? It's both, right? It's made out of metal. It's a fact. It's made out of metal. But is it optical device because it uses optics? It uses lasers. Laser is a spectrum of light, right? Yes. So which one do you pick? All right. Sometimes the rules may not be so clear, and that's why many students would do not appreciate HTS. Personally, HTS is my favorite. If I could just talk about HTS, I'd do that. Unfortunately, I get caught up with other things such as CFR and publications, but I love HTS US. And many of you, the biggest part, if you're going to become a licensed customs broker, the biggest part of your job will probably be classification. Because if you get this right, this will affect the duty, this will affect the origin, this may even affect the marking, this will affect the admissibility of merchandise to the United States. This will trigger other agencies, because a lot of agencies participate with customs. They assign, they have trigger product codes. So if you have a furniture, wooden furniture, not a metal but wooden, but let's say you have metal plus wooden, and then it will trigger what? It will trigger Lacey Act. Anyone heard of Lacey Act? Where you have to declare genus and species of your tree. Anyone heard genus and species? Do I sound like, was it, no, not Linnaeus, what's the name? Charles Darwin? Am I turning Darwinian on you? Darwin is the guy who traveled around and started assigning those weird Latin names to various bugs. Charles Darwin. Yeah. You may have to do that because USDA requires it. Will it trigger the HTS? Yes. So before even declaring it to customs, are you likely to go to your client if he didn't put it on the invoice and ask him to execute the form and give the genus and species scientific name? You bet. Because if you don't, you file that entry, and your client doesn't come back to you in time, you may be subject to penalties for not making appropriate entry or not responding correctly. So it's better to do your homework up front. So HTS is really one of those centerpiece products in the customs brokerage, because other than that, the second biggest thing that this profession does is clear entries, right? Things come in, you're a licensed customs broker, you clear things for me. You worry about that. But what does it take to clear? Well, the biggest problem and single problematic thing is determining the correct harmonized tariff schedule. What else? Well, many importers, in-house importers, Bed Bath & Beyond, Target, Walmart, they employ teams of people. All they do is just figure out HTS for their products, because they are responsible. If they are wrong, if they screw up, and they make that purchase order of folding steel metal tables, which they thought was duty-free, but it's actually 80% anti-dumping duty, and the order is cut for millions of dollars to supply all the Walmart stores, they are in big trouble, right? You thought duty-free and now it's 80%, huh? Figure it out. The shareholders for Walmart will not be very happy. So, how many questions can you screw up? 60, right? You can pass. It's either pass or fail, right? You either pass or fail. And if you pass, that means you get 75 correct. But notice, this is the starting point. This is the starting point for the maximum. Sometimes customs makes mistakes too. Why? Customs is also comprised of human beings like us, right? We make mistakes. And you make mistakes on the exam, customs makes mistakes writing the exam. So what they do is they make question void, or they give multiple answer choices. So sometimes you can make more, but notice, you must answer 60 questions correctly. Did I say you can make 60? You can answer 60 questions incorrectly? I think I said that. No, 60. If I said that, I correct myself. 60 questions correctly, 20 questions incorrectly. So you can make mistake on 60 questions. So what do? You pick those that are, as you should already start making your strategy, you should pick those questions which are hardest and check mark them and move on. Because those hardest ones you can afford to guess, at least guess. And this brings us to the next topic. The wrong answers are not penalized. If you leave it blank, you get them all wrong.